The young girl in question was brought into a private room by the police, by two female police officers. And while she was there, she was told to spread her buttocks, spread her bum cheeks, and cough. She was stripped naked. Her private parts were exposed. As a 15-year-old girl, her private parts were exposed, and they came to realize that this girl at 15 was on her period also. So what did they decide to do? They told her to remove her sanitary towel naked in a room, unsupervised, with no teachers there. They didn't find any cannabis on her, and so she was told to take the same pad that she had and reuse it and go about her business. She was not able to clean up. And this is what happened at this school in Hackney. Now, I'm getting some information that subsequently the teacher has been removed. However, Scotland Yard apologised twice. Now, I don't know what for. I don't know what they're apologising for. Because if you're apologising, then the two police people in question would have been removed, and they have not been removed. So I don't know what that apology is actually for. Now, Diane Abbott, MP, has now taken up the case, and she's, I commend her for taking the case up, but Diane Abbott is actually part of the same system that fails to hold the police to account when things like this happen. Some kind of legislation needs to be put in order. And because people always wonder, right? And I'm not saying all police are bad or all police are good, but people wonder why black people generally have a lot of black people have a disdain for the police. And it's things like this that happen. This ritual, I call it a ritual because it doesn't make any sense why you would ask a 15-year-old girl to strip naked and take off her sanitary towel. That sounds ritualistic to me, just my own personal opinion. So I don't know. There's something that is not making sense here, because if my child, I've got a son, if my child was told to strip naked by the police and spread his buttocks, something would be happening. I'm just telling you, this thing is ritualistic and disgusting. I don't know why you would want to see a 15-year-old girl naked while on her period, all under the guise of she smelt of cannabis, and you didn't find any cannabis. So humiliating a 15-year-old girl is going to get you where exactly? Like that. And I don't know why the staff at the school were not in the room. I don't know why the staff were not in the room with that girl. She was 15. The police officers are adults. We don't know what is. I know these people are put in a position of authority to take care of the public, but we don't know if all of those officers have those sentiments, because it doesn't seem like they did in this case, because a 15-year-old girl who was menstruating was asked to strip naked and cough and open her buttocks. This isn't normal practice. This is really not normal practice for the police. So I don't know what the motive there was. It seems like a humiliation ritual or something, because this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever why you would do that to a 15-year-old girl. Various protests have been had around, organized by various groups. And I think protesting is the first step. If we're going to protest, there needs to be some kind of legislation to remove certain types of searches by the police on underage children, because this is not a normal practice to get a child to strip naked and while she's on her period and spread her buttocks. It doesn't make any sense. I now believe a statement from either Priti Patel or Boris Johnson should be issued, denouncing the actions of the police. That's what I personally believe. The government need to take the story up, and they need to denounce the police's actions in this case. Not in general, but in this case. Now, there's a thing that people are talking about called adultification. And you can take it or leave it, but adultification is when you actually make you make a child an adult in your mind, okay, even though they are actually a child. And I think that happens quite a lot when it comes to black children. It seems like black children are adultified, and people seem to think that our kids are adults and they can be treated like adults. But this was a 15-year-old girl who had just actually turned 15. She was a child. She should not have been subjected to such a humiliating ordeal at 15, regardless if she had cannabis on her or not, which she didn't, right? But to be strip searched while on your period and told to open your buttocks at 15, that is some American prison type strip searches for real hardened drug dealers or murderers or, serial killers. This is not the type of behavior that you enact upon a 15-year-old girl, in my personal opinion. So like I said, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, whoever's in the government right now, it's my personal opinion that they need to take up this story. They need to denounce the actions of the police in this case, and legislation needs to be put in place for officers so they cannot subject children to this type of treatment. It's my own personal opinion. What do you think? It was borderline sexual harassment, says Dean Sinclair. Yeah, I believe so. I actually believe so. I believe it was actually borderline sexual harassment. I mean, when it comes to, we already know as black people we have a certain relationship with the police in general, and it baffles my mind as to why they'd want to incite. Because that's it. Like, if they were to put their child in place of this 15-year-old girl, if any adult told a 15-year-old girl to strip naked while on her period, they'd have a problem with it. So people can try and use the argument, but she smelled of cannabis. No, that was far too far. They went far too far. Anybody's child who came home from school and said, "Mum, Dad, I was strip searched by the police," any parent would go crazy. Any parent that loves their child would go crazy at that type of behavior. So, something needs to be done on the government level, and people need to start putting pressure upon the government to put in some kind of legislation that actually stops police from having these types of powers over children, especially female children. Females are more vulnerable than men are, in my opinion, to sexual harassment and sexual humiliation. And it's actually sounds like this was a sexual humiliation ritual. That's just my own personal point of view, because I can't see why you would humiliate a 15-year-old girl like that. Surprisingly, it hasn't really been taken up by the major news networks to the degree when quote-unquote BLM took up the George Floyd case. BLM, I've seen them post some stuff, but it seems to be relatively small, and I've got my reservations about BLM anyway, so I'm not a BLM supporter. Also, it's very interesting that the hashtag #MeToo feminist movement is quite silent on this also. This is a classic case that would have been taken up by the quote-unquote Me Too movement. However, the Me Too movement seemed to be quite silent on this. I have my own suspicions as to why. I think that it's not an opportunity that they could actually galvanize in their favor. And I think black people in general need to understand that certain organizations have their own agendas and they have their own interests at heart. They're not always about, helping black people out, which is why at the Black Opinion, we have our stance that black people need to start doing for themselves. We need to start doing for ourselves. We need to start having our own industries. We need to start having our own political parties. We need to start having our own anything and everything, and start self-determining ourselves. Doesn't matter if you're left wing, right wing, conservative, liberal. Black people need to start owning their own stuff, and also be allowed to make mistakes in their own stuff, because it doesn't mean we're going to get it right first time, you know, but we have to afford ourselves those types of mistakes to get to the place where we need to be. And I think that we're decades behind a lot of people, because if this was to happen to another culture, for instance, if it was to happen to a hijabi 15-year-old girl, right, in my personal point of view, the country would have been on fire, right? People would have been, the Muslim community would have been going absolutely crazy. How you could subject a 15-year-old hijabi girl to this type of treatment. If it was a 15-year-old Jewish girl, you'd heard something. If it was a 15-year-old, I don't know, Chinese girl, you'd hear something. If it was a 15-year-old, whoever, whatever nation you want to pick, whatever denomination you want to pick, we would hear this on mainstream news. So, yeah,